We did notice that on the back, the labels seem to be identical between batch 1 and batch 2.
Yes.
Like literally identical?
Literally identical.
Okay.
So what's up with that?
The tasting notes, because there's tasting notes on here. So it like is similar enough in the ballpark. No need to update
No
that.
one reads the tasting notes. Welcome once again to Chill Filter, the podcast where we drink whiskey so you don't have to. But you probably should, and you probably are, and that's why we like you. And we like you for a lot of other reasons too. But you know what I like right now? I like Whiskey Del Bac. And but before I talk about Whiskey Del Bac or any of their cool global cask series bottles or Ode to Islay or anything like that, let's talk about some business. Hit us up on Instagram. We don't always say that, but we love talking to our listeners. We also got some good comments this week from our last episode with Nick Taylor from Found North. Love those comments on YouTube. We're still building up our YouTube presence after almost 2 years. I looked at the our first like official episode episodes on YouTube, and we've been doing this for like 2 years now, at least on YouTube. But we've been doing this for 5+ now. Yeah, easily 5+.
Yeah,
almost
and we got some good.
now.
We got some good comments too from Instagram from people we reached out. We put up a post and we asked people for some questions that we can ask. And again, we'll introduce them here in a second. But some questions to ask our interviewee today.
Yeah.
So if you want to be part of that too, and you want to come up with questions for us to ask on future episodes, you can come in on Instagram and respond to our stories.
Yeah. So that's the business. Here is the podcast. Bryan, you doing all right? Quick answer.
Yes. Quick answer. Yes, definitely. Thanksgiving was great.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was wondering what your entry buzzing on.
Oh yeah, I'll get to that. But yeah, just everything's going well. Nothing crazy going on here. Kind of gearing up for a trip to New York here in a couple of weeks. So that'll be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that on a later episode, maybe next week. But entry buzz today is a smattering of Del Bacery.
Hey,
I got the Sentinel Rye, a couple sips of that. Just reminded myself what that was like. The batch 2.
Nice.
2 that we did on an episode not too long ago, and then also picked up that fall release of the Del Bac Distiller's Cut.
Dustin's Cut or Dustin's Batch or whatever. Yeah,
I'll have to look and see if there's a name on here, but it is the fall
I think it's that
2023
one. It's the
release.
most recent one.
Nice.
I think Mark can correct us later if we're wrong.
Nice. And so I'm working my way through that now before I get to Ode to Islay Batch 1, which I'll do mid-conversation here coming up. Nice. All in lead up to the Ode to Islay Batch 2 that we're going to drink today.
Heyo. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Mark Vierthaler. Did I pronounce that right? I think I got that right this time.
Yeah, no, you got it right. 100%. Yeah.
Nice. So I guess you're maybe still on the clock, or are you done for the day for being a head distiller at a big deal distillery?
kind of in between right now, always representing the brand, obviously, branding.
Totally.
Disappearing in and out because I'm totally in the barrel room right now, for those of you watching.
There's so many barrels.
I know. Well, this is actually a photo of our barrel room. So this is what the Rick House looks like. Yeah, I think I slide to the side, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Is that one of the port, or not the port, one of the sherry butts or something like that?
So this is actually, we currently have 253 gallons that we laid down just over 3 years ago. For those of you, who are familiar with our, majority, like 99.9% of our initial aging is
22,
done in
right?
15.
15, that's right.
Yeah. So smaller format barrels. And so a little bit before I came on, actually, the conversation got started of it's not super efficient using small barrels. We're making amazing whiskey doing it, but 53s just make a lot more sense financially. It's more of a standard size. So we laid those down, I'd say, June of 2020, I think.
Okay.
So Veronica, who was my predecessor, and Dustin, who's our lead distiller, they laid these down. And, we've been polling and we've been sampling it. It's really good. Really? It's not quite Del Bac, so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with them now. But
yeah, I remember going there first and just being like, when Veronica was there, we visited, I was dumbfounded. Because I've probably mentioned this before, but I used to be a hater on smaller barrels, like small format barrels. And then I was like, okay, I guess you can do it right. My thought is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is there's just a smaller window as opposed to like,
So
53 years.
there's a lot involved in it actually. So like obviously when I'm giving tours, I'll beat that drum and be aggressively confrontational about small format barrels because you've got to know what you're doing. And it is really easy to do it poorly, which is, I think, one of the reasons it has a really bad reputation.
Absolutely.
So, we focus on how we do our fermentations. We focus on super narrow cuts. Narrow cuts is a big thing because you want these wide cuts for 53-gallon barrels because what's a flaw in new make is going to estrify. It's going to oxidate. It's going to change. It's going to evolve into these really interesting nuanced flavors. You don't have the time in the small barrels. Those small barrels, we start censoring around 10 months, average is 12, longest we're going to let that ride is 15 because you're getting so much extraction. You let it ride too long and it's like drinking permanent marker. It's over extracted. It's too tannic. It's way over oaked.
Yeah.
Are you able to comment at all on what's in the barrels, in the big ones?
Same thing. It's
charred, or is it just non-charred?
It's a number 3 char. So basically the same format we use for our 15 gallons, just in a larger format. And we actually have 2 different cooperages who made it. So we're doing a side by side to kind of see what we thought of for the 53s. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I'll keep that under my hat for a little while.
Yeah. The funny thing is that, I'm very curious to see how these barrels go because like I said, you guys are nailing it. Like, I've said this before, is that this, like, even Dorado, standard Dorado from Del Bac reminds me of Ardbeg Korvrekken, like, which I want to say Korvrekken breaks 10 years. I want to imagine it's somewhere closer to 13 to 15. And maybe I'm wrong. But for 15 months max, that's insane to me that someone could hit that mark. So
we had a visitor a couple of months ago, kind of a big name within the mixology cocktail world. And we were really excited. We brought him out, we did the full tour, and he was interested. And you could tell though, when we got to the barrel size, you could kind of tell, like, you can see that change in the face. Because he had never had our stuff before.
That's a big deal.
Coming in blind.
I came in the opposite. Yeah.
We're like, okay, we sit him down, we pour all the samples and we start with the classic Dorado, which is what we always start with. Like, this is our core. This is a good platonic ideal of what we create. And he takes it and
there's no like soapiness.
12 months. This is 12 months. And like, he kept coming back to that. He's like, I'm struggling to believe it. I'm like, if you know what you're doing.
And that Sonoran desert heat too,
and
things up in a way.
Having the right environment, what is a challenge and can be a detriment. This is, we had this abysmal heat dome this past summer that completely, we already have terrible angel share. Looking at increased heat, now we have to deal with maybe even more angel share. And so it's an advantage. It creates really good, interesting whiskey. There's also those things you have to balance on the business side of things to make it make sense.
Totally. Yeah. So what's typical evaporation loss you guys are seeing for 15-galloner?
We were averaging 10% a year.
Okay. Yeah.
We were hitting 12, 13, sometimes 15% this summer.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really hoping I'm sure we're going to. That's the way the trend is going right now, is these just absolutely miserable heat dome, just abysmal summers. But so already we're dealing with massive loss. And so now we have to look at increased loss.
Yeah, totally. And that, for consistency's sake, that might be a little scary to keep up with, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I don't know that we'll ever, these 53s are going to be really interesting because I don't know that we'll ever, I can say let me rephrase that. We will never get fully away from 15s. That is part and parcel.
You guys are nailing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Ideally, we'd love to start introducing some of the larger format, it's a little more environmentally responsible. We're, letting it sit a little bit longer. It makes a lot more financial sense. It's just keeping an eye on what it tastes like and what it smells like and getting all the right, organoleptic qualities that make Del Bac because we don't want to change that.
Yeah. I would hate for you guys to, go from something that you have now, and then just for the sake of, upgrading the barrels to be like, well, it's 3 years in a standard barrel, but it's like, 12 to 14 months in a 15 galloner. But but like I've mentioned on the podcast before, is like young whiskey can be very obvious, and a 3-year single malt is truly Scotch level. It's like you got to be minimum 3 for a Scotch single malt. But sometimes that's on the low end for a single malt, in my thoughts about it. So
I'm playing a little.
Wait, how many years are you planning on going?
So I don't know that I've convinced everyone else.
Don't get me wrong. Like
we've done 3. Yeah, I'm still not happy with where they're at, honestly. Now I was gone on vacation for Thanksgiving, and Dustin and Steven, our co-founder, pulled some samples, and they were like, okay, we really like it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down with these and let's see. But also the part of me that, loves bottled and bond releases, I'm like, we can sit on it for a couple more months and we can have a bottled and bond.
That'd be cool.
Now, don't know that that's going to happen, but this is me dreaming.
Right. Yeah. I'm playing a little catch up here. So you mentioned with the, was it 15 gallon? 15 gallon barrels. You mentioned with the 15 gallon barrels that 12 months, 15 months, really pushing it kind of. So on all your products across the board, is that basically how long they've been aged for? Or tell me what your normal aging process is like for Dorado and for even the distiller's cuts and everything like that.
So Dorado and Classic averages 12 months on both of those. So for our core, again, we're going into 95% brand new medium plus toast, number 3 char, virgin oak.
Nice.
We've started adding some second use and even the occasional third use 15 gallon in to get a little more nuance, reuse the oak, be a little more responsible. But Classic, Dorado, what you're tasting is an average of 12 months.
Nice.
The Global Cask Collection, the Distiller's Cuts, that's all over the map.
Nice.
Though, as you guys were talking about before I was able to hop on, the Fall 23, that's Dustin's blend, which we're really excited about. I want to say the oldest in that was about 3.5 years.
Wow.
So that had some 3.5, some 1/2. No.
Cool.
So that's again, we're pulling everything from that initial aging out of that small barrel, and then we're going into finishing barrels.
Nice.
We'll ask people be like, oh, how long are you finishing? And I have the obnoxious answer until it's done.
Yeah.
But
it's like the Maker's Mark answer. Yeah.
Sometimes it's 3 months. Exactly. Sometimes it's 3 months. Sometimes it's 2 years. It just really depends on, does it hit what we're looking for? And, and sometimes it surprises us. Sometimes, I like to come in and be like, oh yeah, we know exactly what we're looking for. But sometimes with the distiller's cuts, with the unique finishes, it's just a matter of, we're not feeling this. We're not vibing on it. And then one day we'll go in, we'll dip and we'll pull and be like, okay, pull this now. Like this, get this into stainless. This is where we want it. Yeah. It's going to go into a bottle.
Love that idea that it could be finished for longer than it was aged originally.
The original barrel. That is cool. So does it happen often where you overshoot it, where you're like, I just want to see if it gets better, and then it kills it?
Thankfully, not since I've been here. At past distilleries, I have done that. I have done the this is really good, but let's let it ride, and then you come back to it, and you're like, and now it's over oaked.
Wow, yeah.
And there's always things you can do with it. You can blend it away. You can use it as as a spice agent in future blends. That's a lesson learned over a long time being in the industry is, when you first start, you're like, oh God, I ruined this. What am I going to do? Like, is this, because I'm not going to bottle it. I'm not going to sell this. I'm not going to put something out we're not proud of. And then you go, well, there's other things you can do with it. Nice. Blending, I'm really excited, gets a lot more attention in the whiskey world today. I feel like for a long time, distilling kind of got the lion's share, at least within American whiskey. And we're finally starting to recognize how important blending is. And you can have a barrel that is maybe way off. It just doesn't meet spec. It's just completely unbalanced, but it can be added to other things. It can add that nuance. It can add that little bit of change that you want or need.
That's good to know. I have a question regarding blending. We were talking last week to Nick Taylor from Found North, and he basically sources Canadian barrels, which are usually high concentration grain, like high corn, high rye, maybe tiny bit of barley altogether in the end. But the interesting thing with him was he basically showed me, and we talked about it, that blending is not as easy as it sounds. Especially, and he was saying like, yeah, you add one thing and it just ruins everything, and you put two really good portions together and it makes a bad whiskey. How has that been for you, especially with these global cask series ones?
It's being thoughtful, it's being meticulous, and it's also not having so big of an ego that you don't go, I screwed that up. We blend in small batches initially. I've never been super comfortable doing like, all right, we've got 5 barrels, dump them, let's roll. Because the other challenge is sometimes it doesn't scale properly. It's like cooking. It's like batching cocktails. It's like any other thing that, like, in a smaller format, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate. And so it's also taking the time. I'm in the process right now of working on next year's distillers cuts. And it has been several weeks of, here's 4 or 5 blends. I'm going to taste them now. I'm going to let them sit 24. I'm going to let them sit a week, and I'm going to keep coming back to them. The hardest part, and like, this is something that I always stress to people, is consistency. Like genuinely, like it's easy is not the right word, but for lack of a better term, it's easy to create amazing one-offs. Like, if it is really easy to go like, oh my God, these 3 things or these 4 things or these 2 things together, absolutely brilliant. It is really hard to consistently do that, to know batch to batch to batch that it's going to taste like it's supposed to, that we're on a small enough scale, there's always going to be variance, but we do focus on that consistency. That's why the distillers cuts are nice, because those are one-offs. Those are, this is never going to happen again. We're heading into our 3rd year of the global cask in 24. So the Frontera, which is our Pedro Jimenez, and the Normandy, which is our Calvados, we're focusing on consistency. We're always looking to improve, but the idea is, when you crack open a bottle, it's going to be relatively similar from year to year. It's one of the reasons I really also like the Ode to Islay, though, because the Ode to Islay, we're not doing that. The Ode to Islay is going to be different every year. We want to kind of create, again, that same sense of adventure, that sense of change, that sense of, hey, what we did last year was really good, but let's see if we can dial this knob. Let's see if we can change this slider. So
yeah, I know there's an easy answer to this question. I'm just curious what you're actually going to say. There's fun to experiment and whatnot, and make it a little different here or there. Like, for example, this year is finished in rye barrels. Last year was finished in bourbon barrels. What is it that you can pinpoint to say, but here is the consistency, here's the homage, here's what the heart of the product is that we're having a little fun around?
With the Ode to Islay, it's the smoke. And it's that mesquite smoke. I mean, that is the core of it. And as you guys are whiskey fanatics, you've had, I'm sure, your fair share of Islas, and that even different Islas from the same distillery can have different levels, or maybe they're utilizing a different barley, or they're changing one of those knobs in there, that it's going to change the profile, it's going to change how it tastes, but you're still focused around that smokiness, that medicinal, that iodine. And so that's kind of the heart of the Ode to Islay, is we're going to play around with barrel finishes. We're going to play around with smoke levels. Last year's had a little bit of some unsmoked blended in. This year's doesn't. And so but I think you're going to be surprised when you taste it. Like, he's saying there's no unsmoked in there. It's different. it was interesting having people try it, and we'll talk about it once we pop the new bottles and kind of discuss the flavor profiles. But some of the initial feedback we got from some of our long-term fans was really cool and really interesting, and we're going to try and keep pushing that envelope again, but it will always come back to that core of the mesquite smoke, this idea of creating something that when you open this bottle, when you pour this dram, you are in the Sonoran Desert in wintertime. And it's just bringing those emotions and those feelings back.
Yeah. And what you're doing with that smoke specifically for Ode to Islay, how does that differ from, say, Dorado or well, I guess we'll just stick with Dorado because that's a core product. Is it like 1.5 times smoke, and that's what we shoot for Ode to Islay, or how does that play out?
So Dorado we've actually tweaked over the years. Dorado used to be a lot smokier than it is now, and smoke's divisive. For better or for worse, I'll fully admit I'm a big fan of smoke. I love big peaty scotches. Past distillery, we made a smoked bourbon that had 5 different woods that were used to smoke the corn.
Oh, wow.
And it was the new make. You would taste it and it would be like you had just smoked a cigarette. Like it was just this long lasting, just aggressive smoke, but it aged into this honeyed note.
Oh, nice.
And so, but not everyone loves that. It's distinctive. It's interesting, but we got feedback over the years that maybe it was just a little too much. And so over the years, we've pulled the smoke in the mash bill down. We don't use as much of the smoked malt as we used to. We also do blend in a little bit of classic into that to, again, kind of temper that. We have kind of set guidelines on Dorado, but again, it comes back down to palate. Dustin and I are sitting there tasting every batch of classic, every batch of what we call our MS, mesquite smoked aged spirit. And we're going to adjust that blend to try and hit a consistent smoke level. The Dorado, we want it present. We want it to be through. We want it to finish, and have that nice long mesquite kind of lingering at the end of it. The Ode is to make it front and center. It is to. It's kind of ephemeral. It's when we were doing this year's blend. I want to say we went through 5 or 6 blends. Like we tasted it. And in fact, we had our set blend and we harvested the batch and we went back to it and we're like, it's not where it needs to be.
Oh, wow.
And so we added some more smoke to it, and we actually there's actually a rechar barrel in this batch. Like we experimented with a rechar, and it was beautiful, and it was so different. And it's like using bitters in a cocktail. That was kind of one of those final pieces that as it went in, it was like, oh, here's this kind of interesting nuance within it.
Do you ever, with the smoke levels, in Islay or, even in the Scotch world, there are phenols, in, parts per million. Have you ever considered getting a phenol scale for like Dorado or Ode to Islay or anything like that?
So I want to say it was back in 2021. We actually did send in a couple of bottles of Dorado, and we got our parts per million. We got our polyphenol content. We got our guaiacol. We, got everything kind of broken down. And then we also sent in a bottle of Lafroig for side by side. And
totally.
I would love to do that eventually, that consistently be able to send in something, get that back, and then, we can adjust that. Science can only get us so far. I mean, that's kind of one of the cool things about distilling, especially on our scale, is we can look at numbers on a screen, but also sometimes how you perceive it is different. We can look at that line and say, okay, we have 45 parts per million of polyphenol in this batch of Dorado, but we're not perceiving it. It's not showing up on the palate. It's just like, within beer, you have your IBUs. I've had some beers that are the IBU in theory is off the scale, but you don't get that. It doesn't come across on the palate. Sense. So
I always wondered that. And you're right. It's very, I've tried, what is it? Ardbeg's typically in the 50 range, and Lafroig's typically in like the 20 to 30 range. But sometimes Lafroig tastes a lot smokier than Ardbeg, in my opinion. So that's a good point. I love that.
So I've got the fall release that which it is Dustin's, correct?
Correct. Yes.
so I just finished my glass of that, and man, it took a long time sitting in the glass for it to open up to the point where I was finding sweetness on the nose. But I did find it. I think I didn't give it enough credit the first time I sipped it, because I opened it up and I poured it and I sniffed a little bit, and then I started drinking it, and it was all smoke, and it was very big smoke. To the point where I wasn't getting any of the tawny port or the sautern finishes that were on there. But after letting it sit for a bit, I could finally find that. I think it was sitting in the glass for about 40 minutes or so before I was getting it on the nose.
Nice.
What are your what's your take on that fall release, real quick, before we start talking about Ode and everything?
Yeah, so this year's, so I'm really excited to talk about this, actually. So this year's distillers cuts were really different. So in the past, our distillers cuts have kind of been edicts from the head distiller. It's been, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be these barrel finishes. It's going to be this blend, and this is our chance to show off. And heading into this year, I had 3 distillers with me: Dustin, Abby, and Raymond. And I get a lot of the attention. I'm a little more public facing. I'm head distiller.
We had an Instagram follower comment on how handsome you were. Totally anonymous.
Totally anonymous.
Yeah.
So as I sent that, I was like, oh God, I hope this isn't anonymous. So they're going to be like, okay, Mark's just being a jackass right now.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so like I wanted them to get the recognition, because they're working just as hard. They're working harder than I am. I get the fun part. I get to have, like final say on stuff. They're the ones that are in there doing the work. And so around September of last year, I went to the 3 of them and I said, hey, here's about 8 barrels that we have to work with. And I want the 3 of you to come up with 3 separate blends. And I don't want you to tell me what's in them, but I want you to blend with the idea of seasonality. Like, basically, cool. I want a spring, I want a summer, I want a fall from each of you. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to taste these, and each of you is going to get a distiller's cut. And so Raymond, who unfortunately isn't with Whiskey Del Bac anymore, he did the spring. Abby, who is now part-time with us because she's going back to school and is going to be a badass journalist. So, yeah, but she's still doing part-time.
So are there openings now? And
you
heading
into worry about
20...
those journalism degree people. You got to worry about them.
That's what I've got. I'm a J school guy. So, but yeah, and so Abby did the summer, and then Dustin did the fall. And what was really cool was going in kind of blind to this is all 3 of them had incredibly distinct blends. And all 3 of them had incredibly distinct seasonalities. But what was nice was each one had a clear, like, Raymond's best blend lended itself to spring. Abby's best blend lended it to summer, and Dustin's lended itself to fall. And the fall has become my favorite, honestly. And that's not to throw shade on the other 2. The other 2 are beautiful and brilliant. And, Abby's has gotten an amazing amount of attention. It's nuanced. It's light. It's, in my opinion, one of the most Scotch-like things we've ever produced. Because while we're single malt, we're not Scotch by any stretch of the imagination. But this fall blend that Dustin had, these 2 dessert wines with 2 heavy smoked whiskeys in them, I kept coming back to it. Like, it kind of blew my mind, because like you said, it was aggressive. Like, it was this intense, in your face, but I liked the boldness of it. And the first time I sipped it, I was kind of like, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this, but I kept coming back to it. And it also kind of worried me from a business standpoint of smoke to smoke. Like, we know the fall's coming out. We know Ode to Islay coming out. Are these going to be distinct enough? Because you want to have that. You don't want stuff tasting the same. And I just, it was heavy, and it was rich, and it was oily and long lasting. And the finish on it, oh my God, the finish on it just keeps going. And we knew that was going to be, so that was determined last year. So we knew that was going to be the blend with, some tweaks as we scaled it up. But that kind of gave us a nice comparison for the ode, to be like, this is what we're creating with this fall distiller's cut. This is this, again, very heavy, very dessert. Again, to me, it's rich. It's this, and I get what you're saying. It needs some time to breathe. Like that smoke can just be right up there. But to me, it's in the mouthfeel, and that mid palate is this kind of like cherry and this long, sweet, bright floral finish from the Sauterne. Mm-hmm. That kind of let us look at our ode and go, what can we do to make this different? What can we do to still, again, bring this homage to the smokiness, this idea of what we were born out of, but make it just a little bit different, and make it just a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a little bit to contrast. It's a contrasting product.
Yeah.
Nice. And there's a comparison that I'm excited. Again, one of our big fans who has just he's excellent at describing things. He actually tasted the fall and the batch 2 ode side by side. And the analogy he used was brilliant. So I'm excited to be able to tell that one.
Nice.
Well, I'll pour a little more fall here.
I wish I had the fall distiller's cut.
There will be a sample making its way to you one way or another here pretty soon, Cole.
Sold.
But no,
go ahead.
It's also spicy. It's 116 proof.
Yeah.
So it's hot, but it's delicious.
Yeah, and at least back to back with the Ode Islay batch 1. The batch 1 in Ode Islay is absolutely nothing like this fall release.
Nice.
I mean, if the fall release, in my opinion, is 10 out of 10 smoke, the Ode Islay is like only like 5 out of 10 smoke.
Oh, nice.
Like it like doubles it in my opinion. Now I know this batch 2 Ode Islay, we may be expecting maybe a little more smoke. But that'll be fun to compare. I've got a little more pour to the fall release now.
We'll see.
And
you kept on the batch 2 Ode Islay, you kept it at 110?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Okay, 110. And then we noticed on the bottle, the only difference was that it said, only difference on the front was it said it was aged in rye or finished in rye barrels.
Mm-hmm.
But from my recollection last year, we talked about at least on batch 1, we talked about at least one tequila finish. Is that right?
That is correct.
The majority was in, or was it all finished in ex-bourbon for the first one?
So the first one did, majority was ex-bourbon with a little bit of that tequila finish in it. Yeah. And kind of, again, this focus on consistency, but still being able to be kind of playful and change how we're doing it. If you'll notice on the back of this year's, there's still a little bit of bourbon finish in there too.
Nice.
We actually had some of last year's Ode to Islay that we held back. And so this year's majority is the rye finish. One, that was me being really excited to see what that spiciness, what that, more vegetal note of the rye was going to do to the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
But also this idea of, again, taking what we've done in the past and utilizing it as an additional layer in what we're trying to create.
For the rye barrels. Oh, go ahead.
We did notice that on the back, the labels seem to be identical between batch 1 and batch 2.
Yes.
Like literally identical?
Literally identical.
Okay.
So what's up with that?
Tasting notes, because there's tasting notes on here, so it like is similar enough in the ballpark. No need to update.
No one reads the tasting notes.
It is, and it's it's working through tasting notes that you anticipate before the final blend. So talking about how things can change as you scale up. So if it was drastically different, we would have been like, okay, this needs to be completely scrapped. This needs to be completely changed. But what I'm trying to also get us to do is kind of drift towards another set. So
I like that.
Next year's isn't going to be the same as this year's, but it'll kind of be a gradient, like shades of change, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nice. So these rye barrels, can I know where they're from?
I mean, they're Sentinel. I mean,
I knew it.
It was
I thought it was High West.
So that was our fall 21. Our fall 21 distiller's cut was finished in High West.
Was that a Kent Cheeseman joint?
That was, Kent's
nice.
the one who hooked us up with those. But yeah, it was, from a business standpoint, we have a ton of rye barrels now.
Makes sense.
And the focus of that Sentinel is that slight hint of mesquite in it. And so we harvested that, and I'm staring at 53 gallon rye barrels. And I'm like, let's see what it does for this year's ode. You know,
cool.
let's see how, again, that focus of the 95.5, that bright, punchy, peppery note, what's that going to do?
Yeah. Perfect.
No, that's exciting.
I'm so happy. I totally called that one.
Oh yeah. No, I was banking on High West. I was like, totally going High West. What do you say we crack this? At least, and I want a double cork pop out of it, or a triple cork pop. But at least double break the seal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, mine's already open. So
that'll be, wow. I like to keep the top, but this one's shredded, so it's not a bad thing.
You keep the little plastic top?
I do. It's weird, but like, I don't know. But if it shreds, I'm out, you know. But nice little stuff. Okay, so I'm so excited about this one, and I'll just give myself, or talk a little bit myself about what I remember of last year. I think I give this a 9.65, which is one of the highest ratings I've ever given a whiskey. I think only to be beat by E.H. Taylor's Seasoned Wood, 2016. And maybe one other, I forget though. And I remember it was very honey rich. I mean, I'm drinking it right now, so it's like nice honey, really well-rounded, like sherry kind of feel to it. Reminds me of, you know, I think of like some of the better Islay scotches that are well-rounded and sweet. But I also think there's something, I think the tequila barrel really brought it home. Or like the tequila, you know, edition last year really brought it home to be this smooth thing. Like I'll tell people when they ask me, what's the smoothest whiskey you've ever had? I'm like, smooth is not one of my go-tos. But if you say smoothest liquor I've ever had, it was Avion 44, I think, which is a tequila, of course, which was like butter going down. It was just, wow. Like you can't even, no one can complain with that one. It's just pure, I hate to use the word smooth. But I think tequila, you know, the finish on some of last year's really brought it home. That's my what do we call it? Hypothesis, but I might be wrong. So let me ask you this, Mark. Be honest. Are you as proud of this year's batch?
I am.
And maybe you should mention that after, but yeah, I don't know.
I am.
Okay, cool.
And it's, I think you'll be surprised. I really do. I've gotten a lot of that of like, well, this isn't like last year's. It's not, but again, I'm always excited. I'm always, you can tell it's just slightly
I should have synchronized it.
Mine is like a perfect octave above yours.
Oh, that's cool.
Perfect. Oh yeah, let's get some of that in here.
Ooh,
that's amazing.
ASMR.
Like the nose.
ASMR, yeah.
I really
Gotta
like
do
the
that
nose.
every time.
You know, I have no doubt that this will be a great whiskey. Whether it beats last year's or not in my rating, I have no doubt in this.
So
one.
if you'll
I think
remember,
you guys are
last year's conversation, I made that comment. Like last year, the reaction to last year's was so amazing that I'm like, I'm kind of panicked now. Like, are we going to be, and maybe not even top, like again, just as good. Like that's always the goal is.
Totally.
I'm a little giddy over here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a big rye guy. I'm a big rye guy, and there's so much rye on the nose to this compared to Act One. There is less smoke on the nose to me, and there is beautiful rye spice and rye hard candy.
That's my note. Yeah,
sweetness on the nose. Yeah,
and minimal mesquite comparatively to last year. There was a barley like smoked from last year more so than this year's batch 2 is much more hard candy rye, tiniest bit of like that smokiness. But I have a feeling the smoke will show up on the palate, but I might be wrong. Either way, it's amazing nose,
So
and
much
it's
candy
really
in there.
surprising to get a single malt that smells like a rye, and like a good rye too.
Batch 1 on the nose is smoky and buttery bourbon. Very very buttery to me. Batch 1 just kind of smells like it's gonna have a thicker mouthfeel, but batch 2 smells lighter. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of that nose. Yeah. What is it? Jim Murray, the old, no one. Actually, we might be doing an episode of something soon that has to do with Jim Murray, but he would always split it into 25 points for nose, 25 points for palate, 25 points for finish, and then an overall kind of 25 points. So it would add up to 100. And the nose is like a 25, 24, or like probably a 24 or 25 range. I'm loving it. But it's not like blowing your face off either. Like it's a really well balanced nose. So
yeah, for sure.
Let's go over that sip.
So I already did. So I'll start talking. It was kind of exactly what I expected, and I really, really like it. It's got a little rye spice. It's got way less smoke. I'm actually looking for the smoke a little bit, which is good though. It's just so rye forward,
especially going after you had that fall release.
Yeah, right.
Like that really, really massive, aggressive smoke in the fall. It is. Yeah. It's pulled back. So the comparison. So this is Chris Plunkett, who has been a huge supporter of us since the very beginning, and is one of our biggest smokeheads. And so that's why I was like, I want to get his thoughts on this. He tried the fall and the ode this year's ode side by side, and he's like, the fall is like a bull that's out in the ring, and it's bucking around and it's being aggressive and it's getting ready to throw the cowboy off. And the ode is that same bull, but it's in the chute. It's a little more restrained. It's a little kind of that energy is held back a little, that it's there, but it's not as in your face.
Yeah, definitely from an intensity standpoint. I totally get that 100%. Yeah. The finish is driving me crazy on this too. And it driving me crazy in a good way. The finish is, it really evolves from the palate. What you get on the palate, there's a little higher hump. It continues to, intensity rises up a little bit after the palate to give you a nice, a little more spicy than hard candy finish. A little more on the spicy rice side, which again is so good for me.
You got any dessert wines finished in this batch?
I was going to say sherry or port.
No, I was thinking Sauternes or Sauternes or whatever it's pronounced. Mark probably knows.
This is Sauternes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, this is bulk rye finish. Again, there is just like a soupçon of last year's, which had that heavy bourbon, had that tequila, and that really kind of that elevated was that rechar barrel, that mesquite smoked rechar, because what was present in that rechar barrel was the grain. Like the barley came through in it. And
nice.
If I'm being honest, and I've had this conversation with people, I'm so proud of this. I think this is beautiful. I think it's balanced. I want a little bit more smoke.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is, I had for last year's, I had this small amount of a distiller's cut that really never saw the light of day, because by itself, it wasn't where it needed to be because of the smoke level. But being able to use that brought that smoke intensity forward in last year's, and I didn't have that this year. And so what we played around with was kind of our baseline smoke level that we use for our Dorados. I'm still really proud of this though, and I'm still so pleased with what happened. And it is, again, I think the smoke is there, but it is, again, talking about playing with those smoke levels and going back to that and going, yeah, we're proud of this. Let's see what we can keep doing with it.
Yeah, I'm going to play with the smoke levels. I'm going to blend my own fall 2023 and my Vierthaler batch 2 together and see what I can do. It sounds real good.
So on the palate for me, I was thinking about this one in a good way. Up front is like rye showed up a lot more than I would have expected. When I compared it to batch one is definitely barley forward comparatively to batch two. You're getting those nice notes of that kind of barley note, that kind of floral, sweet, and even potentially a little bit of that sherry kind of note that you can sometimes get from certain like Highland scotches, for example. But of course, with the mesquite to it. But then when I tried batch two, up front rye, and it's very complex. I would actually even say this is more complex than batch one. And what I mean by that is it goes through a little bit of ups and downs, and it changes throughout. My opinion on the mid palate for batch two was that it showed the smoke. The smoke just all of a sudden is like, hey, here we are. Here, smoke is plural, of course. So, and then it turned into this really nice. It reminded me, like 100% reminded me of last week's Found North, which got a really high score as well. But only because it had this like nice fruity sourness to it. This nice, and not sour in like a really in a bad way at all. It was like this nice, like sharp, but it's not too sharp. It's a weird way to put it, but like this like lift of sour fruit, but in like a berry kind of way. I loved it. So far on the palate, I think this is going to be very much up there. Or on the neat pour, it's going to be very much up there with last year in my rating, because the complexity is one thing, and I do love that rye note that you get up front as well, and you get the rye note in the end too. But it's very much different in that it is not barley forward on this one, which is crazy to me. It's a single malt. It's got 100% malted barley in it. So. Yeah. All right, let me pour a little more so I can do the water pour. Ooh.
All right, you said it was 100% rye barrels. There was no blending really of finishing barrels to go into this. You took all that rye.
Besides the last year's
and a little bit of what I call our commodity MS, which is our pre-blended mesquite smoked whiskey before it becomes Dorado.
Gotcha. Cool.
All right, 3 drops for me. Last year, I think I was most blown away that this did not disappoint in any of the pours. Especially the ice pour was like, I remember like stopping in my tracks on the ice pour, being like, how is this so good?
Recommendation too is one large cube still the recommendation even for batch 2?
It is for me.
Okay.
I don't get me wrong. Same thing. When we do these blends, we will give our recommendations, but we also want to focus on it needs to be enjoyable across every single area. It needs to be good neat. It needs to be good with a little bit of water. It needs to be good with some ice.
Yeah, so far so good. Nose is a little more alcohol vapor with some water. Not a bad thing. Definitely rye forward as opposed to barley forward still. Not getting as much sweetness on the nose, but I have a feeling the palate will be pretty sweet still. So we'll find out.
The complexity continues to impress me on this. The nose, kind of the rye, herbal and grassy notes. The rye spice drops off with a little bit of water for me.
Yeah.
So the nose is a little more on the creamy sweet side, and the palate is all candy and not much herb or rye spice at all. I do like it a lot. It's actually going to be hard for me to decide if I like water or neat more.
Mm-hmm. This is a hard one too for me. The rye was there, but the barley finally showed up. But as it was a good mixture of rye and barley. Like I said on the neat pour, it was like much more rye, but I feel like it's a good balance of rye and barley on the water pour. You said you had how many barrels of this for the rye? Like 50 plus or something?
We're looking, yeah, and a lot of them have gone out to other distilleries now, other breweries.
Nice.
This I want to say this batch, the backbone of it was, oh god, was that 4? It was 6 rye barrels made up the backbone. So
nice. It's very good. Yeah, it still kills it with ice. I mean, with water. I think I prefer the neat, though. There was a little bit of a drop off in the finish with a little bit of water, but that's not a bad thing. It's just I prefer the neat. So,
gonna add a little.
Well done, Mark.
Even
so, how are you gonna do next year?
So, and again, that's why I'm saying, like, we're so proud of this year's. The comment we kept getting was beautiful.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Which kind of like smooth, like
yeah.
I can't do much with beautiful in terms of like what's good, what needs to be improved. We did do a hyper smoked batch, basically right after we blended this. I was like, again, I want that dial, like the more dials we have. Nice. And so we did lay down a sizable batch of almost all mesquite smoked barrels. Nice. Like we did, I want to say it was like an 80-20. So 80% smoked malt, 20% unsmoked malt going into those barrels.
Wow.
And so, very pronounced smoke, very pronounced mesquite. And yeah, we'll see. It's laid down specifically for Ode to Islay, but we also may taste it and go, we want this for something else. So.
Nice. Yeah, I dig that. Best nose yet.
Before you go ice, real quick, I went a little more water just to see how far I can take this. And a little more water, it got a little bitter. So I think makes me kind of lean more. Maybe I do like the neat the best because I did only just put a smidge of water in there. And anyway, that it got a little bitter on the back end with a little too much water. But I did. I'll go ice now with Cole, and I specifically because it was in the recommendation to have one large cube.
You got a cube.
Bring one big ice. I'm gonna do a whole new pour. I knew I was gonna like this enough to want another whole pour after this. So I got a big old cube here ready for me. But what? How do you think
big? Show me how big. How big are your cubes? Anyway, nose so far with the ice is my favorite nose so far. Ooh. Big cube.
Now it has my hand oils all over it.
All over that cube. It is bringing in that that note that I mentioned on the neat at the finish, where it's like a little bit sour, but in a really good fruity way. One of the other things I think I mentioned last year was that honey was a lot more forward on the batch 1, not as much on batch 2, more of a white sugar, not so much a brown sugar either, but I'm digging it. Great nose with ice.
Did you put some ice in there too, Mark?
Nice. I did. Unfortunately,
was that a seltzer, Mark?
That is a seltzer. Yeah.
Nice.
I drink so many seltzer.
That's what our last guest said. Yeah.
But to the point that this is kind of how obsessive I tend to get is when we're doing sensory on things, I will typically do by itself still water, seltzer water. Because it changes the acidity of your seltzer water is going to change.
Carbonic acid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I also like to taste things at the distillery, at home, and somewhere out in public.
Oh, that's cool.
So
where do you go in public?
It depends.
Trade secret. Okay.
It really depends. Typically somewhere outside. I also like to go someplace there's going to be strong odors. I make a lot of efforts for consistency of things I'm nose blind to at the distillery. But I also understand most people aren't drinking like that. And so I think of back when I used to occasionally work in radio, I had a sound designer who once said, yeah, do your initial editing on really nice headphones. But before you send anything out, get really terrible, like dollar store ones.
Interesting.
and listen to it, because it may sound great on here, but most people don't have this. So it's that idea of how are most people going to enjoy your product.
Like phone app development. Like, I'm sure they used really nice computers or whatever to develop that game or something, but people are going to be playing it on some cell phone from 2014, and if it crashes all the time, they're going to be like, I'm out.
Exactly.
Palate with the ice. Good throughout. No complaints. I don't know if it beats the neat though. The whiskey is cooler. Weird.
Yeah. However that happens.
Yeah. Science, man. I don't even know.
So it stands up to. It still stands up with ice. There is substance there, but it's entirely different to me. And granted, now I'm drinking out of a lowball glass like this with a giant cube. I have no nose notes on this. I can't smell anything. I even tried to cover up most of my glass so I could sniff. But so anyway, we'll trust Cole's nose notes on that.
Yeah, great.
But it's back to closer to batch one with that butteriness. It's creamy buttery now, and I can't find any rye notes anymore with my big ice cube. It's just the descriptor we all love: smooth and creamy and buttery. It's tremendously easy. It's drinking so far below 110 proof, I don't even know where to put it.
Right.
I could hand this to anybody and they would love it, because it's just smooth, buttery, creamy. Zero rye hard candy and zero rye spice anymore, though.
Yeah, I'm definitely much more barley forward on the ice, as well as the smoke shows up a little more, which is cool.
Oh yeah, I see.
Which is one of the reasons I really like it on that ice, is that much slower dilution really lets that smoke blossom, especially across the mid palate, which it's present through the mid palate throughout. But again, just that's to me why I like it with that big cube.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, I've tried it all three ways, and I still can't decide which is better.
I'm gonna,
which is a good thing, Mark.
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled with that.
Let me try one more sip.
I know. I poured my water into my ice so I could pour a little more neat, just to give it one more go here. Man. I think I can definitively say I like this more than batch one, though, because I'm a big time rye guy, and neat and at least a little water gives me those rye notes that I love to drink anytime.
And I'm right there with you. I'm a big rye guy. And what I was hoping the rye barrel was going to do, it did it. It brightened it. And because like you said, you have these brown sugar, baking spice, clove in batch one, and you still get some of that, but it's brightened. It's a little more floral. And the complexity. I'm really happy to hear you guys talk about the complexity, because that is something that we always try to look for. Is one note things tend to be boring, and getting a dram that can go basically tell its own story from start to finish. That's kind of always the goal.
All right, you did it, Mark. Batch two beats batch one for me.
Yep.
But not by much. They're very close. So last year I gave Ode to Islay batch one a 9.65, but I don't think this is yet beating the H. Taylor season wood yet. But I do think it's getting there, and I think this is a 9.675. That's right, going into the thousands. So moving on up, I really do think it is better, and I applaud you, because honestly, I didn't think you could outdo last year, and not because of who you are, not because of anything, but just because it was so good last year. And I really mean that. This is even better than last year. So did you get any, did the whiskey wash call it the best whiskey they ever had again this year? Or was there any external reviews
I haven't seen any of the reviews come through yet. So
yeah, last year, or no, not even last year, actually. Batch 1, I'm pretty sure, it came out March 6th, 2023.
We did our episode March 6th, yeah.
And I don't know when Ode itself came out, Batch 1, but there was plenty of time before we recorded, or before you recorded your Ode to Islay Batch 1. So maybe the reviews are coming. I don't know. Maybe we're on the forefront. Everyone's going to tune into Chill Filtered.
We also find out how good it is.
We also released it an entire month early this year.
So there we go. I was curious if your timeline was the same.
It's always dropped the first Saturday of December. Nice. And we kind of wanted to give a little bit more time and give people a little more access, which is still also super humbling and just absolutely just, again, makes what we're doing worth it. We increased the amount of bottles for this year, which, is also, that's another thing we've changed, and you focus on scaling up.
Yeah.
And last year we sold out at the distillery in just over a week.
Nice.
And around almost just shy of 2 weeks, we sold out at the distillery.
This time.
So nice. people are still loving it, and they're supporting it. And that's
great.
Just been absolutely amazing. I think we're sold out. I don't tend to cross the line into retail too often, so there may be some bottles, but I do know when I came back, there was nothing back in the warehouse. So
nice. Hey, so we had some of our listeners reach out and talk about. Oh, I guess I'll let you do your rating in a moment, Brian. But we talked about some of our listeners. One or two are in Canada, and they were like, "Hey, when are we going to get some of this goodies?" And then one of them, it was in Wisconsin, and I guess that he wasn't the one. But is there any progress in further distribution for Ode to Islay, or even just Del Bac? Yeah.
Yes. So we did just open. Our VP of Sales and Marketing is going to kill me. I think 5. We just opened 5 new markets.
Oh, nice.
And heading into 2024, I think we have at least 3, if not 4, on the docket that have basically said, we want you guys. It's just we're heading into what we call OND, October, November, December. It's a nightmare to try and launch new brands because everyone's just focusing on getting through the year and the holidays. But we're expanding, and
that's awesome.
I can do the shameless self plug. We did just partner with Big Thirst, and we can. It's not technically coming directly through us because we can't do that through the 3-tier system. But if you go to our website, and there's 2 options. There's buy in Arizona, buy outside of Arizona. 42 states can get us shipped directly to them now.
That's sweet.
Including Ode to Islay.
Nice.
Assuming it hasn't sold out, because they did pick up 50 cases of it and sold through it in about 5 days.
Nice.
So
hey, that's how you know.
It's amazing. It really means a lot.
Is international? Is that just a whole other beast? I mean, like Alberta, Canada, for example, like, is that just a humongous, some other hurdle that's maybe sometime in the future kind of thing? Or how does that work?
We would love to. It's finding the demand, is when you hit that demand, then that becomes a lot more reasonable. We also have to balance that with fulfilling the US. We're small. We're a small batch producer in Tucson, Arizona. And while growth is amazing and, we're focused on growth, we want to grow, we want to be successful, you don't want to sacrifice the quality. You find that balance of, maximizing efficiency and still producing the quality of the product that brought you that attention. And so, we would love to be in Canada. We actually focusing on being, I hate this term too from marketing, but disruptors. We've actually had interest in the UK.
Nice.
Big interest. But here's the thing.
I'm not surprised.
You cannot call it whiskey in the UK unless it's 3 years old.
Oh, weird.
We would be a spirit malt drink.
That would
what
hurt.
if you only sold Ode to Islay?
Yeah, I mean, and that we've had a couple. We're like, okay, these technically qualify, but we wouldn't even be able to call ourselves Whiskey Del Bac. We would have to take the whiskey out of our brand name.
That's funny.
We had one of the biggest, I don't know that I can drop their names, but one of the biggest importers of American craft whiskey in the UK write an article in their magazine basically saying the 3-year rule is it's outdated. You shouldn't have it.
I get it for scotch, but maybe not for whiskey.
But whiskey, you cannot call it whiskey. And they were like, and they pointed to Whiskey Del Bac. They were like, Whiskey Del Bac, you are, and basically they said the UK is missing out on this whiskey because of this arbitrary from World War II, or maybe even World War I regulation that it has to be 3 years to be whiskey. And so the interest is there, and we would love to. It's also, a whole other, it's amazing being in the liquor industry. Like it's a huge honor to be able to create things like this, that bring people together, but there's also a lot of regulations, and there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And obviously you want to make sure you're doing that right.
Yeah. Right. No, that's cool. Good to know. Bryan, what's your rating on this one?
Yeah. Okay. I'm so we reserve the 9.0 tier and above for a classification we lovingly call Hubba what.
Hubba what?
The fact that this whiskey withstands water and ice, and that it stands up to it, and it's still delicious in every way, almost just instantly qualifies it as Hubba what. So easily 9.0. I mean, if you deem 9.0 truly exceptional, I deem this truly exceptional. And I'm going to peg this at 9.3. Nice. That and if I were to have given a rating to batch 1, I'm going off memory from an hour ago when I was drinking batch 1, but I think batch 1 would still be 9.1ish. It wouldn't be right next to it, but there'd be a little space. It'd still be very good, but I, the rye lover, am pegging batch 2 a little bit higher because on the neat pour and with a smidge of water, you're getting some rye hard candy notes and a little bit of rye spice. And there's a little bit of smoke there. It's not, anyway, it's delicious with the rye hard candy. Love it.
No,
thank you.
Yeah, I remember last year just being blown away, like, how can you outdo this? And I think you have, which is amazing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
See how next year goes.
More pressure. Oh, God.
Really hot. Yeah.
So more questions there. If into this next segment of the show where we would normally, talk about a news article or something, can we just rapid fire some questions? Just ask you some more questions.
Oh, please.
Where future versions of Ode to Islay. So we had a bourbon finish, we had a rye finish. Are there any particularly interesting, unique finishes in the future, or can we expect some sort of just a wobble between bourbon and rye all the time, or are you going to go crazy with it, or what do you think?
Yeah, you're going to see rye being the dominant. Nice. One, just because of how happy I was with it. Like,
nice.
Just coming to it, again, it's finding that balance of do you keep changing things and eventually you go, wow, we completely screwed this up. So you're going to keep seeing that rye being the dominant finish. We're starting to cycle through some of our other finishing barrels. And so I'm going to be really excited to see what we can do, again, like using it as a light spice. Like I'm a big believer you can over finish whiskey. You still need to be able to taste that core whiskey that went into that finishing barrel. And so as you get into those third use, fourth use, sometimes even fifth use, it's small. It's these slight changes. And so I'm hoping as we start growing, as we continue to grow the brand, we can start folding some of those almost pushing spent, but not quite finishing barrels to, again, complexity and adding that nuance. And one of the things that's been amazing, and I think, Whiskey Del Bac was doing it long before I ever came here, is it is very hard to make in my opinion at least, a single grain whiskey complex.
Totally.
It's the more, as you add grains, you add complexity, you add kind of nuance to the new make, which then goes into that finished product. And one of the reasons I was attracted to Whiskey Del Bac and why I was honored and thrilled when they offered me the position was Whiskey Del Bac is a nuanced, interesting single malt.
Totally.
And to keep pushing that, like to keep creating these whiskeys that tell their own stories is the way I always like to put it.
Nice.
I love that. Next question / suggestion. And you can write my name on the bottle next time for the suggestion. We kind of alluded to it, but I think it would be good to put batch 3 on batch 3, like on the bottle.
So, yes, 100% agreed. Had that conversation with our VP of sales and marketing, starting, and not just for Ode to Islay, for the Frontera, for the Normandy, because I was staring at 2 bottles of, I can tell the difference between last year's and this year's Frontera because we changed the proof.
Nice.
We upped the proof a little bit, so I can look at that label and tell you. Other than permanent marker that I marked on it, I don't know which ones are last year's and this year's Normandy. So yes, starting next year, we will have batch numbers on.
And then they'll be like, wow,
collection.
batch 1 was a collector's item because it didn't even have a batch number on it.
Right.
And batch 2 too.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, I was at Total Wine. It was like, I don't know, the day the press release said the bottles were going to be available or whatever. I was at Total Wine and there was, sure enough, there was an Ode to Islay on the shelf. Okay, no, let me pull it back a little bit. It was a buddy of mine who was at Total Wine and he sent a picture of an Ode to Islay because I told him that like batch 2 is coming out. I'm really excited about it, blah, blah, blah. So he sent this picture and I was like, don't buy it for me. I'm sure I'll be able to find it. I don't know. Or I bought one straight from you guys. But anyway, if that was me, if I had been there at that Total Wine, I would have bought that bottle. Turns out that bottle was a batch 1. I don't know where it was, how it gets hung up in the distribution system. I don't know. But I absolutely would have bought that thinking it was batch 2. I would have brought it home. I would have set it next to my batch 1. Cool. Batch 2 says bourbon. Batch 1 says bourbon. I would have just assumed the whole thing.
The consistency is unreal.
You killed it this year as well.
Right. Yeah, it's we're always learning lessons. You know, it's looking back and going, oh yeah, we should have done this. But yeah, that will be next year. That conversation has happened of we really need to differentiate, especially with Ode to Islay, as we are changing that every year.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that because I think the thing that means most to me is there are other brands where I was introduced to their product. They're introduced to their special editions without knowing that there was any history there. And to be so impressed with a bottle and to look and see that it says batch 7 on the bottle and to think there are 6 previous batches. I didn't even know it. Just, it escalates my interest in the brand to no end, where like now it's like if I ever see any buddies of mine or any people on any trading sites or whatever, like I want to pick one of these old ones up because I loved this one so much and these are unobtainable and blah blah blah. So I'm so happy that's happening with us.
Yeah, good stuff. So we had one of our listeners reach out and said, any other grains? You ever going to work with anything besides of your own make? Anything besides barley, malted barley?
You know, not in the foreseeable future. It's just single malt is tough. Single malt is labor intensive. It's low yielding. 100% of our capacity is dedicated to single malt, and that's what we're built for. It's what we built our name on. You know, I can't say never. You know, there's always that chance, but the way we're set up now, we're single malt. Now we are in conversation with a couple of different growers, a couple of different malt houses to start playing around with different malts types. But yeah, hasn't happened yet. Conversations, but it's finding that balance of we have to keep making the stuff that made us famous, the stuff that people love, the stuff that we're proud of, but also continuing to experiment and play around with. And we actually just had a really good conversation with a visiting maltster a couple of weeks ago who spent some time over in Scotland and was like, hey, take a look at our malting system. Because, we do our smoked malt in-house. What do you think we could do even here? What are some changes we could make, some things we can tweak? So other grains own make, I don't see that happening, at least not for a while.
Hey, you're killing it right now. Why stop? And you're killing it on different levels. Like, it's not just like you're making one consistent thing amazing. It's like you're making multiple things amazing.
We look at it like a restaurant menu. If they're doing 10 things, those 10 things are probably amazing. Right. If they're doing 110 things,
too much,
probably okay.
Makes sense. Bryan, you want to hit the next question?
Yeah. So Madtown marketer Ben Klepsig, one of our favorites, he is curious if there are any other single malt distilleries that are impressing you. Who's on your list? Who are you looking at, and you're maybe taking some inspiration from, or anybody else that you think is doing it right?
Cedar Ridge in Iowa. Their quintessential is unreal.
Good to know.
It's brilliant. It's balanced. It is so unique. And at least for me, those are the things that really stand out to me. Like, if I can taste something and I'm like, you have found your voice, you have found the style. So Cedar Ridge, definitely the quintessential. Andalusia out of Texas. Same thing. Like, Andalusia is just absolutely crushing it.
Never even heard of them, I don't think.
They're small. They're only I think only a couple of years old. I could be wrong. And Andalusia guys, if you're listening, and you've been around, I'm so sorry, but Andalusia, if you can get your hands on it, absolutely brilliant work.
Nice.
That's great. Now we're keeping an eye out now.
Yeah, and and there's more and more coming out. There's more that are just producing high quality, interesting single malt. And, obviously over a year later, we're still hoping for this TTB designation. But I just always tell people, like, for better or for worse, bourbon has a flavor profile. Rye has a flavor profile. You tend to have, and they're good, I love them, but they tend to kind of be within that bell curve of what you expect them to taste like. While we have those guidelines within American single malt, 100% malted barley, made by one distillery in the US, you can use new oak like we do. But you can use used cooperage,
totally,
which a lot of people are doing. You can change the type of malt you're using. You have all these different things that. What impresses me about the industry and what makes me excited and like honored to be a part of it is you're seeing these distilleries create their individual identities. And you may have had one American single malt and maybe you didn't like it, but there's probably one out there that you do like.
100%.
Because what we're doing is different than what Westland's doing. That's different from what Spalcones is doing. And so just, keep your eye out and pick up bottles. But yeah, this is a plug for the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission. Check out their website. They will have a full list of people who are active members, distilleries that are involved. And if you can get your hands on them, try them, because it's malted barley, water, yeast, the barrel, but it's going to be completely different.
Right. I know. Oversimplifying. All you need is.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you'll get Whiskey Del Bac like me.
That is the recipe. You heard it right here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we're also transparent, because I'm a huge believer. I can give you my mash bills. I can give you the yeast I use. I can give you every single step of my SOP and what we've done in the past at Whiskey Del Bac, what we do in the future, and it will not taste like what we're doing. Because you don't have our rick house, you don't have our still, you don't have the flora and fauna floating in the air that is getting into our stuff. So it's really exciting, and it is just absolutely amazing to see what everyone's doing within the industry.
Yeah,
that's cool. I noticed you guys also from last year, Robbie was begging for a certain panel hat. And I noticed on the merch
5-panel
website,
hat.
yeah, you guys finally pulled it off, and it looks good.
It's a good hat.
Yeah.
I will go with the dad hat. I'm pushing 40. My kid's grown. I will do the dad hat now. So
yeah, no, that's a good thing. No, it looks beautiful. I should pick one up myself. I'm not much of a hat guy.
Yeah,
but it looks good. So, yeah.
So I will say Ben had a couple more questions too. So he was curious. You kind of alluded to this earlier. You pointed to the barrels behind you because you're literally in the rick house right now.
At this moment,
totally.
right back there.
Smell it.
So any long-term stocks laid down for like 10-year, 15-year, 20-year? Are you guys shooting for the stars with any sort of age statement products?
So we've obviously kind of become a death to age statement distillery, because while we're fan of age statements because it's transparency, it is that idea of you are telling people exactly what you're getting. There is an over-reliance on age statement equaling quality. That being said, again, it's a lot of it sometimes is just feeding the beast. It is getting stuff laid down, getting stock ready, and getting it out the door into bottles. We do have one barrel. It's a used bourbon barrel. I want to say it's barrel number 1000. So that's from years ago.
Nice.
Long before pretty much any of the production team was ever there. It's about half empty now.
Oh, wow.
Because aggressive angel share.
Right.
I think that's one that when we taste it and it's the time, it will come out.
Nice.
I would love to. I have some really nice used cooperage that I walk past every morning, and I go, I want to fill you, and I want to let you sit for a decade, and I want to see what happens. Maybe a couple years from now.
That's cool.
Unfortunately, nothing actively in the works. The 253s, obviously, and then that used bourbon barrel number 1000. I
love that.
Keep an eye out for that.
Nice.
That's cool. He also asked any other fun experiments you guys got going on besides what was already mentioned today?
I mean, like what we talked about, we've got a good rhythm. We're always looking at ways we can change our malting in house. We would love to do more Arizona barley.
Whoa, that'd be crazy.
Sinagua Malt House here in Arizona, they're doing amazing work. We've had some conversations with them. Most of their stock goes to Arizona Wilderness. If you're familiar with them, they're a brewery up in Phoenix. And so we're having those conversations. Again, it's right now we have 2 mash bills. We have our unsmoked, we have our mesquite smoked. Those are distillers malts. They are very light roast. We're focusing on, conversion. We're focusing on yield while still getting the high quality taste. I want to start playing with some more different, with some different malt styles. I would also love to play with some different yeasts. Cool. Talking about what other single malt distilleries are doing, Westward. They put out, I think they just put out their second batch of their sourdough.
Nice.
And it is a single malt that is fermented with a sourdough starter.
I love that.
And I have batch 1 sitting on my bar. And it is brilliant. It is unlike anything I've ever tasted.
That's cool.
It is complex. It is, you taste it and you're like, this is a single malt? It's just, it's so interesting. And so things like that, I would love to start playing around with.
That'd be cool. Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Talking to one of the tour guides when I was just in Portland in February, he was like, well, I wasn't here yet. He's like, but what everyone told me was it smelled terrible while I was fermenting and it smelled terrible while I was distilling, but the end product is beautiful.
That's cool.
So, just being able to, we're big believers in trying to be conservators of our environment. We're big believers in, leaning into what the Sonoran Desert offers us. And so it's something we'll keep looking at, is I've been lucky enough, and, Stephen, our co-founder, and Kent, our CEO, have been willing enough to experiment that we bring ideas to them and go, hey, what about this? And most of the time they let us play around with that.
Nice. That's a great environment.
Yeah,
it is.
Sure.
It is.
Any other questions? I think we nailed them all.
Yeah, I think we did too.
Yeah. So, Mark, it's an honor to have you on. Like, honestly, if you told me 5 years ago that I'd have guests like you on this podcast, I'd be like, yeah, that will never happen.
So handsome.
Yeah,
so
that's one question we never really fully got to. How did you get so handsome?
Yeah,
it's the facial hair. It's the I finally, in my late 30s, can grow a beard.
Nice.
If you look at pictures of me years past, I'm baby faced, but no.
Oh, that's so funny. I think it's over here. I got like a patch on the right side of my chin.
Yeah. That's where mine is. Yeah. right side, nice little bit of alopecia. Just
twinsies.
But no, thank you guys as always. It's a huge honor. We go in every day, and obviously we're proud of the stuff we do, but it makes a huge difference that people appreciate it. And it's an honor to be able to share what we love with you guys and with your listeners and with everyone who enjoys Whiskey Del Bac.
No, that's great. I hope, I certainly hope that you can at least be proud of next year, even though I know it's you got your work cut out for you and like the pressure's on, but I hope you can even outdo it. I
hope that anyone who gets keyed off on the rye spice and the rye hard candy gets one of these bottles before they sell out. You hoping for anything, Mark?
I'm hoping for that TTB designation.
Nice.
It's not that we need it. We're out here, the entire American single malt community is making a name for itself, but it legitimizes it. Totally. And I hope personally that there are more people who love American whiskey who can come to the category. And again, that even if you don't like Whiskey Del Bac, I mean, obviously we want you to like us, but we get it. It'd be boring if everyone liked the same thing. And so go out there, try your local craft distillery. If they're doing a single malt, even if they're not doing a single malt, try your local craft distillery. We're going through a renaissance right now. There are so many amazing local distilleries, and just, it's easy to fall in the rut of the usual stuff you pick up every day at the liquor store. But, there are people out there crushing it, and go out and help support them, and you'll find something you like. I know you will.
And if you're lucky enough to have my experience with Whiskey Del Bac, gift someone Whiskey Del Bac, and then they will be turned on to it. So I hope that some people out there that are like, hey, I get Whiskey Del Bac all the time, it's amazing. Well, I hope you gift it this week. But most of all, listeners, I hope that our love of whiskey lifted your spirits. How big? Show me how big. How big are your cubes? Anyway,